Hello, welcome to TikTok Tuesday and live on Facebook as well. So what we do every Tuesday at noon, we answer any questions that you have about immigration. So go ahead and start putting all of your questions down in the comments, and we will start answering those questions here right now. So my name is Mercer Cawley. I'm one of the partners here at Cawley Forsyth, and I'm a board certified immigration specialist here in North Carolina. The good news about immigration law is that it's federal. So that means even though we're here in North Carolina and licensed in North Carolina, and that's where I'm specialized, we can answer questions around the world, and we can do anything relating to immigration in any state. I'm also joined by Attorney Raquel. So how are you doing today, Raquel?
I'm doing great. As Attorney Mercer said, my name is Raquel Fernandez, and I'm an associate attorney here at Cawley Forsyth. We're excited to be back today. I feel like, especially lately, we have a lot of DACA recipients and hopeful DACA applicants that are tuning in every Tuesday to find out more. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. If you guys have any specific questions about DACA or any other immigration questions, we're going to be here to help you guys out.
So before we get into questions, there was some big news that came across yesterday relating to TPS. So I wanted to talk about that first. So with TPS, specifically with Venezuela. So if you're from Venezuela and you have applied for TPS, the government announced that they have extended the deadline, so meaning the expiration. So anybody that has TPS or your TPS is still pending, that's been pushed to March of 2023 or 2024. So we'll double check that. Now, what I want to make sure that you understand, that does not mean that they've extended the deadline for filing the application. The deadline for filing the application is still September of 2022. So this coming September, in about 3 months, that is when it is due. But I believe they usually do it for 18 months. So it usually goes, I believe it would be March of 2024.
Yep, you're right. March 10th, 2024.
Yep. So March 10th, 2024, that is how long it's been pushed out. So if you are currently in TPS for Venezuela, it's been extended to March 10th, 2024. If you have an application pending, once it's approved, it will be approved for March 10th, 2024. So that's great news. And so that is something we definitely wanted to start today with, is letting everybody know that there were some updates about TPS with Venezuela.
Yep. And we were all keeping in mind for our own clients, and just great information if there are any Venezuelan out there who hasn't applied for TPS yet, especially if you're only applying for asylum and you're thinking, oh, well, I've applied for asylum, I don't have to apply for TPS. And sure, you don't have to, but it is recommended. You should definitely do a consultation to qualify.
Absolutely. And that is key, because a lot of people think I have asylum, so I already have the work authorization card. That's absolutely true. But you don't want to miss this deadline. You don't want to miss the deadline of September 2022. There may be a way to get around that deadline in the future, but it's better if you're already in TPS, so that way you don't have to worry about trying to get around that deadline in the future.
Yep. Great news and great information shared.
Okay.
And so, do you have any questions over on your end, Attorney Mercer?
I had one just pop up, and that is, how do you overcome the permanent bar? And that's a good question. For those who don't know, what the permanent bar means is that if you entered the United States without a visa or with a visa, and you remained out of status for more than 365 days, and then leave the United States, and then re-enter the United States within a 10-year period without a visa that second time as well, that triggers what's called a permanent bar. Now, what usually happens if you're in the United States out of status, either with or without a visa, for 365 days and you leave, that triggers a 10-year bar. But there's a waiver to get around that 10-year bar. The permanent bar, which is when you re-enter a second time, that one does not have a waiver available to it. That's why it's called the permanent bar. So you have to be out of the United States for a 10-year period. Then after you're out of the United States for a 10-year period, you can request to be allowed back into the United States. So it's a type of waiver that would be available to you, but in order to even get that waiver, you have to be out of the United States for 10 years. Now, if you're in the United States, really the only way to overcome that permanent bar is through what is called a U visa. That is one of the few ways. That there may be some others like asylum and some other things, but a U visa has a waiver that will waive the permanent bar as well, and that is for victims of violent crimes here in the United States. So that may be an option for some people as well to get around the permanent bar, but the permanent bar for most, they're going to have to go out of the United States, remain out for 10 years, or hope that Congress does something to actually fix it so it gets rid of that permanent bar.
Yeah. And we actually did a live panel event weeks ago. That video is up on, you can go over to CF Immigration's page and hit the link there and watch the live event where we talked all about the different bars and waivers and exceptions, and it's a really good video. You understand that better.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a time where we had all of our attorneys together. Well, except I guess we didn't have Jessica at that point. We had 3 of our attorneys together. We were answering questions. We're working on getting so that we can have another panel with all 4 of us together.
Yeah, that'll be very exciting. And I have a question here from Kitty Pie 97, and she asks, "Can you speak more about what's going on?" So she wants to know what's happening with DACA.
Sure. So at this point, nothing's really happening other than we're starting to get news coming out of what we think is going to happen in the future. So in August, we're expecting to get a new rule about DACA to come out. And we're expecting what the new rule is to allow people that have never applied for DACA, so first-time recipients, to be able to apply. Right now, the way that everything has been going with the courts is they've stopped people from applying for the first time. So for instance, if you were young and too young to apply for DACA and now you're old enough, but they closed the window for filing for DACA, once this new rule comes about, you will be able to file for DACA for the first time. Also, people that allowed their DACA to lapse. Hold on one second, a phone call is trying to come through. There we go. So for people that allowed their DACA to lapse, meaning they went out of DACA for a little while, they were no longer under that program. If it's for more than 1 year, if they were out of DACA for more than 1 year, then the government basically takes the position that you're filing for the first time. So those people would be able to file again as well. So that's what we're expecting to happen in August. I believe also we're looking to that there may be a possibility with the courts down in the Fifth Circuit getting involved and possibly doing the same thing. But the one we're very hopeful about is the one that's going to be coming out in August, and we're hoping that a new rule is coming out to allow that to happen.
Yep, and we're going to hear more news. As you know, there is deal going on, and that's the oral arguments that were heard last Wednesday. So I posted a video about that. I'm sure some of you have watched it by now. But any updates we're going to be sharing on CF Immigration and on my page as well. And I'm also going to be doing a live on Friday at 3:30 where we're going to be focusing on DACA.
Absolutely. So join, and then also thank you guys for sharing. Keep sharing this so that we get as much information out to people as possible. We're sharing some great information here about Venezuela TPS and about DACA. So we want to make sure that this gets into as many people as possible.
I have a question here from Ricardo. So he's asking about DACA. Is there any update so far? We don't use on the proposed rule yet. We're waiting for an update there in August for DACA applicants. And then as far as the court case, oral arguments were heard last Wednesday, but no decision has been made yet. Stay tuned. We'll definitely let you guys know if we hear any updates.
And I think I got an answer here that the person is currently in status of a T visa. So anytime you're with T, US, anything like that, my recommendation is that you wait, just because a lot of those visas are tied to how long you've been in the United States. So for instance, a U visa, you have to be present for 3 years before you can file for citizenship. For residency. And if you leave the United States during that period, trying to get back in can be difficult. So with that situation, I probably would wait until you get your green card. And then once you have the green card, you can travel as much as you need to, as long as you don't be out of the United States for more than 6 months at a time. But you'll be able to travel at that point.
Yep. And I also have a question here from Isidro Molina 7, and he's wondering if there is any news for El Salvador in regards to TPS. So TPS for El Salvador, anything new there?
Haven't been any new updates for El Salvador. So the expiration is still coming up, I believe. Is it January?
I will confirm. 1 second. So it looks like
it could be the fall.
Yeah, December 31st, 2022. The EAD is extended until December 31st.
Okay, so not quite January, December 31st. So there have not been any updates. The last few times that they updated for El Salvador was that they extended it 2 years ago. But they didn't extend it until we're getting closer to that time period. So as we get closer to December, we expect to get some more news about what to expect for El Salvador. But right now, there have not been any updates. The only update was with Venezuela. And again, Venezuela was coming up on September. So we're almost 2 months there. So that's why they went ahead and extended it. So I expect to hear something about El Salvador probably October, November, hopefully not that late, but it could be that long.
Yep. Great stuff there. And I have a question here. I think this was answered. Ucha Marie Davis, and they're wondering, how long does the process take to approve the hardship? So I think they're wondering about the 1A possibly. And I think you had said taking years, correct?
It is. It's the 601A, and that's the one where you're in the United States and you're asking for permission or the waiver before you leave the country. And that's taking about 2 years. Now, if it's an actual 601, so the person is already out of the country and you're having to file a waiver, those are being done a little bit faster. And I think part of that's because the families are separated, that you're out of the country and your family's in the country. So those are being done a little bit faster. I wouldn't still call it fast. It's still taking over a year. But the 601A, if you're in the country, then that's taking about 2 years to get done.
Yeah.
So I've got a question here. I have a green card and have a U.S. and applying for U.S. citizenship. Can I submit papers for my wife? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. Now, depending on what your wife's status here is in the United States, for instance, if she entered with a visa, then once you become a U.S. citizen, at that point, you're considered what's called an immediate relative. The good news about immediate relatives is that you can do every step inside the United States. So you can file your petition, your wife can file her petition, and do everything. So there's one interview at the end, and at the end of that interview, assuming everything goes okay, then she would get her green card here in the U.S. without having to leave. If you're an LPR, if you're a permanent resident, you're not an immediate relative, so there may be a requirement to leave the country depending on what her status is. But you can go ahead and you can submit your part if you wanted to, but depending on how close you are to citizenship, you may want to wait so that you can file everything in one time. We call it a one-step adjustment. So I would wait to file everything together as long as it's pretty close.
Yep. We can hear our CFO back there. He's just singing, kind of.
For those of you who have seen Wagyu in the past, there he is. He is my American Mastiff puppy. He is considered our CFO, which is the Chief Fund Officer. And he's laying down barking at us right now. So So that's what that noise is.
Or awake. Yeah.
Let me see. You got a question, and it just went up. Hold on one second. There we go. So 601A, is it necessary for 212 pardon if only entered once? So basically a 601A, what that fixes is unlawful presence. So if you've been in the country, if you entered one time, you've been here for more than a year out of status, and then you're leaving to consular process, that's when you need the 601A. The 212 that you're talking about is typically for people that have an order of removal and they need advance permission to come back in. Or we're talking about the permanent bar. If they've been out of the United States for 10 years and have the permanent bar, they can file I believe it's the 212 as well. Could be the I-19 too. I have to double check that. But it's two different things. The 601A is for unlawful presence only.
Yep. And I have a question here from Adritis, and she is wondering about a permit of good faith for the U visa. If she doesn't get her permit of U visa, does that mean that her U visa?
So I'm not sure what you mean by permit of good faith. If what you're talking about is a certification, so what happens is after the crime has taken place, then the police department, the district attorney's office, one of these offices has to certify that you filed, that you were the victim of a violent crime and that you helped them. So that could be what you're talking about as certification of good faith, is that in good faith, you were helping to solve the crime. So that is something that could be talking about there. But the other thing would be certifying good moral character. Sometimes when you get a waiver with the U visa, they also want good moral character. So we need to see exactly what you received from the government so that we would be able to advise you exactly what to do.
Yep. And I have a question here from Kitty Senpai 97 once again, and she's wondering, what about for first-time DACA applicants who have their case pending? So we've heard that if you had your case pending, let's say you filed in 2021, according to a former who I guess had some conversations with USCIS, 2021 applicants would be approved. Everyone's going to get approved who applied for 2021. They're just going to get their decision. So right now it's pending. By August, they're going to start being able to approve or simply get a decision on those cases.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rebel 23 is wondering if he'll be able to apply DACA if he was 1 year ago, but came back right away. So Rebel 23, it depends. You have to see if you qualify for DACA depending on the new requirements. So it seems like a lot of the requirements are going to stay the same, except they did change the 16 years old requirement to 15 years old, meaning you had to be in the U.S. by your 15th birthday. We have to wait for USCIS to make all these requirements official. So in August, if this proposed rule becomes official, we'll be letting you guys know what the requirements are. But we'll definitely have to see. You can call us for a consultation when that happens.
And when you call for that consultation, it'd be important to know the exact dates, like when you were removed from the United States, when did you come back? Because you have to have what's called continuous presence after a certain date. And unfortunately, orders of removal can cut off that physical presence. So that would be important to know as well. Got one here from Desi4. Can I apply for tourist visa for my husband waiting for I-130? So I'm assuming that he is out of the country and you filed the I-130 here in the United States. Depending on when you filed the I-130, there may be an option of what's called filing an I-129F for a K3. A K3 visa allows a spouse to come into the United States and wait for the process to finish here in the US. Now, unfortunately, the K3 is taking a long time as well, not quite as long as the I-130, so it depends on when you filed it. But that may be an option for you, is to look at a K3 to bring your husband in June 3rd. So you've just recently applied, so the K3 may be an option for you. Sometimes a tourist visa is difficult if you have a pending I-130, because they may think he's coming to the United States just to finish the green card process here. And so that can be a little tricky in getting the tourist visa that way. So you may want to look at the K3. That may be an option for you.
And I'm going to take the final question on my end here, and this is from Raquel Dominguez. And she's wondering if you can file an I-601 waiver inside the U.S.
Yes, so the I-601 waiver typically is filed in the U.S. So for 601, not the 601A, that's when your family member is outside of the United States. They've been denied the visa, and they're told that they need to file a 601. That is typically filed here in the United States. It used to go to Arizona. I believe it still goes to Arizona. I'd have to check and see exactly, but it will go to an Arizona lockbox, and then it'll be sent to one of the service centers to make a decision. So typically, yes, a 601 is going to be filed here in the United States, even though the family member is outside the United States.
So yeah, it's Phoenix, Arizona, and the 601 waiver covers a lot of admissibility. If you're thinking about 601 in regards to unlawful presence, then you would be doing the 6A if you're inside the United States. Now, if you're outside the United States and you need that waiver for unlawful presence, then you would do the 601 waiver. And then the 601 waiver can be filed while you're inside the United States if it's for health-related grounds of inadmissibility, criminal grounds, immigration fraud and misrepresentation, alien smuggling, other types of inadmissibilities.
Right, absolutely. So it's definitely good. You have to keep those separate and know which forms to file, because even though they have the same standards, they get filed at different times during the process. So it's important to know which you're going to file and when you're going to file it.
Yep. So thank you so much for your questions, everyone. And I didn't get to all of them. You guys had really good questions this time. And I mean, every Tuesday you guys come up with some great questions. So thank you for, submitting them. And if we didn't get to answer your questions, call for a free consultation. We will be back on Friday, and we'll be doing this live in Spanish then. So you're welcome to join us, and also invite other people to join as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we do this, as Attorney Raquel was saying, every Tuesday at noon. We answer questions in English. Every Friday at noon, we answer them in Spanish. So that way we want to get out as much information as possible about the processes that are going on with immigration. So Attorney Raquel, thank you for being here today. And hope everybody out there was able to use the information that we were able to get to you. So thank you very much.